more than explaining the background, because the background has been explained in the previous classes time and again. Okay, the first one. When you look at this headline, what are the basics that you need to know? Core inflation. What do you mean by core inflation? This is the homework that you need to go back and check and take a look at this graph. Okay? Take a look at this graph and read the definition of core inflation and make sense of why food prices have anything to do with inflation. Food and fuel fluctuate a lot, which influences inflation calculation. This is important for your prelims exam. The basics that you need to know is the definition of core inflation. Okay? That is the first thing you need to know for today. See, this is an ad basically, but yet I want you to observe certain things. Look at the map here in Odisha, because you might get questions on these themes also. Just observe the map here. Odisha is, projecting itself as the hub for rare earth minerals. Okay. There's also controversy. Our PSUs are fighting amongst themselves for a strategic, advantage in this rare earth minerals business. Ideally, our PSUs are not supposed to compete against each other, but compete together against global value chains. Like, we have to find our place in our global value chains with our foreign competitors. In the absence of a unified strategy within our PSUs to see an outcome based alignment is needed in our PSUs, and we have to have this after this alignment is there, we need to align with PP in private sector through a PPP model, and Odisha has a very good opportunity in that front. So, what are the things that you need to know? This ports, Dhamra port, Paradeep, Gopalpur port, this is an entire industrial region. Just read this ad once, you will get some insight. The next time you are reading any article on rare earth minerals, keep Odisha in your mind. Okay? Again, another pointer to learn. Disaster management. Sendai framework. Just a quick recap. If you don't know what Sendai framework is, it is a methodology of planning for handling disasters. Before the disaster, during the disaster, and after the disaster. How? Take a look at this map. Pre-impact capacity building and how to respond after a disaster. Before, after. The entire framework is there in Sendai framework. I just want you to read the basics of Sendai framework. Just Google, you can come across many articles what is Sendai framework. Look at this image and then read this. Article. Clear? Importance of India and Europe walking in step. We have been reading many IR articles. This is written by Shashi Tharoor. Okay. What is India's need? What is India's need with respect to foreign policy? What is India's strategy rather? What is the driving force behind diplomatic activities? What is the driving force behind strategy? Strategic autonomy. I've been telling you daily about this. What do you mean by strategic autonomy? Where we have complete control over our decisions, nobody else is dictating, and those decisions are taken with an objective of securing our national interests. If you are a political science student, this is called realism. Clear? Many times I've discussed. So, India's need is very clear. We want to have a strategic autonomy. See, I want you to understand some things. When do we align with any country? When our needs are met. When do we what is that? Second thing is, after our needs are met, then must be some strategic advantage that we are going to get by that alignment for a future course of event. Right now, you might not need anything at this point of time, but for a future point, if this alignment can give us something, we are future proofing our country's needs. It's like that relation can be like an insurance policy against something bad that can happen, right? So in these two directions you have to think, our present needs or future needs. Only then we have to align with some country. It's purely transactional for our needs, either present or future. Please keep this in mind. Whenever we are aligning with a country, it is either of these two cases only. Similarly, even other party will align with India only because of these two reasons. So diplomacy is the art of negotiating and figuring out a way, what are the converging areas? What are the areas where both India and EU or UK or whoever you want to place here, what is that converging area? Figuring out that area of convergence is the art of diplomacy. Yes or no? So, what do we have in common? See here, economic ties as the corridor of opportunity. This is what the main point of article is. See, this entire thing is based on the history of Europe, and I'm not particularly keen on you making notes out of this. Yes, it will give you a context to understand all of that, but it's not needed in that detail sometimes. Those details need not add any value to you. Look at the present, look at the future. The past should be understood to make sure those mistakes are not repeated, but that dimension is not necessary in general studies GS2. If you are a history student, okay, it makes sense. If you are a PSIR student, maybe yes, it makes sense. But for others, this is the paragraph that you need to focus on. Clear? So, why do we converge? Where do we converge? Firstly, both in the near future, what are we anticipating? We are anticipating a future where digital technologies will take over. Correct. So, the presence of a strong digital protection acts, laws where AI is not misutilized, laws where surveillance, where privacy goes for a toss. To avoid those kind of scenarios, we are trying to create a global architecture of the law to control how technology should be shaped, how algorithmic bias should be avoided. We have discussed all these points: algorithmic bias, technology, surveillance. So I'm not repeating them once again. In the previous classes also we have discussed. These kind of things where you don't have here one second, there is one specific line. See, after technology, there is one more thing. Strategic alignment now extends to defense and counter-terrorism. Okay. So when we are looking at energy Atmanirbharta, for example, we are looking at defense Atmanirbharta. Anything that makes India depend on an external agent is putting India at risk. For example, if we are depending on some other country and if there is a global disturbance, the supply of that commodity is stopped. So naturally, our diplomatic activities are aligned in that direction where we no longer depend or reduce our dependence for those goods on those countries. But at this point of time, a non-negotiable for us is having good ties with Gulf nations for our oil needs, because 85% of the crude oil is imported. Similarly, weapons, you have to align both with the big powers, Russia and US. You're depending on Israel. So obviously you will not have independence in those areas. Now, if you want to gain leverage, one area is technology, because European Union is known for creating strong laws, very strong laws with respect to technology. Companies are forced to comply with strict norms. You cannot collect data just like you wish. That is not the case in India, that is not the case in US. And companies are forced to act because otherwise they will not be allowed to operate in those countries. We have to move in that direction. India should control the narrative of how laws should be regulated in global technology. Second is the economic dimension. We have trade relations that are so strong. Without EU, lot of our exports will slow down and it will cause economic slowdown. So we need EU for sure. On these two strategic levers, India should act very strongly. Third one, you have IMEC, India Middle East European Economic Corridor, which can become the modern day Silk Route. Where, what is a Silk Route? Previously in the olden days, ancient days, Silk Road or a Silk Route is a pathway or a route where traders used to take their silk products or silk from one part of the world to the other part. So IMEC, if you don't know what IMEC is, just Google. I already asked you to do this. If you haven't done it, there are some new people who are joining the classes. So IMEC, you can just Google what is IMEC, read about it. It's an infrastructure project for connectivity. Okay. Now, the next time when you read something like this should be on your fingertips. It should not be like, oh, I have to revise, I have to go back and revise. These kind of infrastructure projects, whether it is IMEC or INSTC or mapping based questions, keep looking at them frequently. Open a file or digital file where all this kind of projects, all this kind of international organizations, mapping point, places in news, you compile them at one place from now on itself. It will make your job easy because you are doing the background work and it will be easier for you to recollect those points. Okay. So these are the takeaways. So broadly speaking, on one front technology, second is economic front. Together, coupled with our need to contain China's dominance. Europe also has that tendency, not just Europe, every power has this tendency to keep China in check because China's strategy is surveillance, to control everything, and that is not safe for any country. Therefore, to create a rules-based global architecture of governance, we need Europe, and that is what this article is suggesting. Okay. Let's move to the next article. Women STEM careers and a more receptive industry. This is not a new article. I think most of you who have been attending my classes must have figured out from the from the heading itself what will be there in the article. Can you tell me, guys? Now, the methodology to look at this article I will be explaining and what to take away. See, when you make a claim, when you make an assertion, you need data to substantiate it. So, I want you to look at this article not as a source of explanation, but as a source of argumentation. How do you argue your case? Let's say you make an assertion. You say that it's a patriarchal society. I don't want to take your word for granted. I need some proof. Where will you show that proof? You cannot come up with a random report. You need to have a substantial, credible source. A UN report, World Bank, World Economic Forum, national level organizations in India like Niti Aayog. Let's say if it is for economics, RBI, Ministry of Finance, Ministry reports, economic survey. These are the credible sources, right? At least for the sake of UPSC, we have to consider their credible sources. The methodology employed for arguing in this article is what I want you to observe. Let's say, what is STEM? First of all, what is STEM? Science, technology, engineering and medicine. In these careers, the problem is women are not getting enough opportunities. The primary reason is obviously the patriarchal structures. Now, I made this assertion, right? I need to substantiate it. How will I do that? Take a look at this article. There is data here. Labor force participation. Take a look at that. How many people are getting PhD scholarships or PhD funds? How many of them are actually getting to stay back in the pipeline for finishing their PhDs? How many of them are dropping out? Why child rearing or any traditional responsibilities, they become a roadblock? All this kind of statistics are good enough for you to prove a point that women are not getting enough opportunities. And this is called, in sociology, leaky pipe syndrome, where because of the inherent, you can note this phrase down and use it in your answers in GS1. Patriarchal structures is one of the reason. Write this down. If you have written it down, I'll move to the next. Second, lack of a proper mentorship and incubation for their ideas. See, every young student who is walking into a new career path, no matter how brilliant they are, it would be nice to have some mentors to guide them and tell, okay, these are the mistakes that we have done. I don't want you to go in that direction. Maybe take a course correction, take a detour and walk in this path. Your job will be easier. Women do not have that kind of mentorship. That is the second problem. Third one, we do not have enough incentives to retain. As a part of the global brain drain, there are no special incentives for women because structurally it is skewed against them. Women need more incentives to keep them, right? We need more incentives to keep women in the research. Even the good ones migrate out of the country because they do not see any incentive here. So it's a double whammy because one, they are moving out of the country, the talented people are moving out of the country, and two, they are not getting the whole agenda of both the genders, they are supposed to stay back. Brain drain is there, and then gender parity is also not there. These are the reasons why we say we need more representation of women in science, and for that it should be an industry led change, because there is only so much that the government can do given our constraints given our constraints in R&D. Okay, this one, same lines, patriarchal society, and here you are looking at the NCRB data. Dowry death. The biggest problem of violence against women, there is an international convention. Write it down. This is the homework that I want you to do. Okay? Now, the biggest problem is lack of conviction. When a complaint is taken to a police station, out of 100 complaints, only 30%, 31.5% of them see some conclusion. Conviction happens only in the 30% of the cases. Rest of them are non-responsive, or they're just pending. This causes a lot of problem because it doesn't encourage people to go to the police station. Okay, the entire article shows regional inequalities. So where will you have more bias against the gender? Their conviction rates are even poor. So observe this article. This section in the Hindu is called the data point. Single point, it will explore in multiple dimensions with data. So this is very important. Violence against women is a very important theme in both GS1 and GS2. So read this and add this data point. Look at the regional inequality. It's enough. Go through this article in the Hindu and the data there. Why is corporate investment lagging behind? I am expecting this article to come in mains 2025 in one way or the other. I'll tell you why. GDP formula. This is the GDP formula. I am presuming that you know this formula, but if you don't know, GDP formula is the total, this is the total money that a country has. It will come if people buy something, or someone from the outside or within our own country invest in building some infrastructure projects for the future. It will come when government spends some money or through exports and imports. Okay. As of now, we are witnessing a paradox. We are witnessing growth. Economic growth is there, but corporates are not investing. Why is this happening? When you see corporates not investing in an economy despite economic growth, it signals that we as in the corporates do not have confidence in the future of this country, or there is lack of confidence on whether they will get the necessary returns. Why is this happening? Because this is coming down. Consumption. Right now we are witnessing a slowdown in the economy. Why is this happening? Because firstly, global tensions, whether it is the Israel war or the Russia Ukraine war, the post pandemic growth, this post pandemic growth from 2022 to 24, this was more like revenge spending after 21. People were, locked down inside their homes for almost 2 years. So just people wanted to come out and spend a lot of money, and then all this global tension started. The rise of spending did not sustain for a long time because income should also grow proportionately, right? That is why this whole tendency, when you watch movies like this, Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, and you feel like, you have to splurge money, revenge spending, etc. You can do that for 6 months. Even in that movie, if you watch that movie, just a reminder, Hrithik Roshan is not a state bank employee, he's an investment banker there. He earns crores. Unless you are in that position where even if you can resign a job and go back to that job and get the same kind of salary again, we always have to plan for our future. If that is the case of Hrithik Roshan, what about a common man? Conspicuous consumption-led economic growth will not sustain, and that has been proven again. Simultaneously, you are witnessing a trend where the Gen Z crowd, they are increasing their spending through debt, through credit cards. Are they spending it on, building something for the future? No. They're spending it on buying the new iPhone. They're spending it on going out on vacations. Where their salary is 50,000, they spend 1 lakh every month. Where will they return that money from when they have no control? And this is a trend at an individual level. At an economy level, it is not that simple. If you categorize the entire population, this is the bottom, this is together middle, and this is the top. Upper middle class, lower middle class, poor section. If you take a look at the population of this country, this poor section is as much as the size of Africa. Many African nations together, like Nigeria, Ghana. The population of poor people in this country can be compared to that of Nigeria, Ghana, or some other countries. The middle class, upper and lower, both combined, can be together representing EU, or let's say Brazil, not EU, sorry, Brazil. Brazil is a better comparison. And the top 1% are equivalent to a country like any Gulf country like Bahrain, Saudi, or rich people. The paradox of India is that all these sections coexist. And this is the section which is having conspicuous consumption, the salaried class. Also remember, how much percentage of people are there in formal economy? 9 to 10%. This 9 to 10% contribute to the economic growth in service sector. Imagine the inequality in terms of employment. When 9 to 10% of the people contribute nearly to, let's say, service sector contribution, out of 100 rupees that India gets, 50 to 60 rupees is coming from service sector. Okay. Let's say all the salaried class people are in services only. There are no one in manufacturing. For the sake of simplification of our calculation. Out of that, let's say 50% are there in, let's say, service sector. It's a very oversimplified calculation. Just to show the asymmetry, I'm putting like this. Okay. This 50% is there in 10% people's hand, and they are not having enough salaries and they're spending through debt. What is the plight of these people? You don't have to care about this. They will control the rest of the things. You will have to care about them in terms of taxation, and we are doing whatever we can. We have cut the corporate tax. We have eased the rules for compliance. That is not the problem. We have to worry about these people. These people are not spending more. Consumption for these people is less. So, what should we do? Put more money in the hands of these people, attract investments. So, recently we are witnessing a trend where government is rightly increasing the expenditure in capital investments. Meaning, we are building roads, bridges, and building infrastructure for the future. Obviously, it is not going to happen overnight. It will take some years together. Once those projects fall in place, private sector players will also start investing in this country. So it's a temporary problem. Meanwhile, we have to put more money in the hands of the people so that economy doesn't come to a grinding halt. This, coupled with the problem of the service sector, where there is a danger of AI taking away jobs, we need to be ready for that eventuality also. We need to invest money in reskilling this population, change the curriculum at the college level. We have to be responsive for the changing global order. We cannot have the outdated curriculum. So this article is not just about economy. It's a sign where it's giving a roadmap on how India should conduct itself for the future. We are not only putting money in the hands of people, we are also investing for the future so that the companies can come and invest. At the same time, we are also preparing for the future of the service sector industry and also Atmanirbharta in manufacturing. It's not an either or kind of a game. We have to do all of this. And this is the gist of this article. Clear? That's it for the day. We will catch up tomorrow.